It should be familiar. Right now we're doing our welcome and announcements. In a couple of minutes, we'll start a presentation. Um, that will last for about a half hour. Then we'll have Q&A for Daniel, and we'll conclude with a little informal socializing. At that point, we'll go into the gallery view. This session is being recorded on Zoom, and it will be posted on YouTube. It is also currently live streaming to Facebook. If you would like to look at the recording, it is at this YouTube link. You can grab it from cdny.org. It's on the Country Dance Lore page. Jeff has been maintaining that list, which is quite lovely. If you wish, you can avoid being videoed and live streamed by turning off your camera. So it's stop video right here in Zoom. If you're in Facebook, we can't see you. We ask you to remain muted during the presentation unless you're asked to come in and turn on your speaker, turn on your microphone. We also ask you to type any questions that you might have for the Q&A into the chat box. And you can just do that anytime. We'll collect them. Paul's going to collect them and relay them to Daniel at the end. Other announcements. If you have any feedback, please, I'd love to hear it. I'm the English program chair, and you can reach me either at my personal email address or at englishprogram@cdny.org. If desired, you can make a donation to CDNY at cdny.org/give. Tonight's team, I'd like to introduce us. I'm Dorothy Cummings. I'm the ECD chair for CDNY. Jeff Barry is here running our Zoom controls and also live streaming us to Facebook. Thanks, Jeff. And Paul Ross is running the door. He's also going to collect the questions for the Q&A. Thank you, everybody. And this is the preview that you got when I had the wrong PowerPoint up. This is next time. In 2 weeks, we meet again, and I am putting myself through what I've asked all our other speakers to do. Make myself nervous by presenting a topic rather than a dance. And my topic is going to be the hornpipe. There are many types of dance, many styles of dance, some of them in 3-time, triple time, some of them in duple time. They're called the hornpipe. Why are so many things called the hornpipe, and what is the hornpipe? That is my talk in 2 weeks. But tonight is Daniel. Daniel's topic is music theory for country dancers. He's got a little bit of his own background to tell you, but I want to give you a little bit of the structure of what he's going to tell you tonight. One is he's talking about the mathematics of music and footfalls. How do these things relate together? And he's going to show this not only with his talk, but also with animations of where footfalls land and a couple of videos demonstrating his points of how many beats are given to each move and how you figure out how many beats go to each move. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to our speaker, Daniel Popowich.
Thank you, Dorothy. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Dorothy. Good evening, everyone. Thanks to Dorothy, Paul, Jeff, and everyone at CDNY. As Dorothy said, I'm going to do a little deep dive into the structure of music. 2 weeks ago, Margaret and Cynthia did this great talk about how the gestalt of music and how it informs us emotionally and motivates us through phrases of music. I'm actually going to go down into the bitter details of beats and talk about how the structure of music, the time signatures can help us in how we dance, and also figure out what's happening in dances, reconstruct a dance, or how to figure out how you can do a fussy dance, a dance with a lot of little bits. How can you break that down? My agenda for the night, the first things are, I'm just going to give a brief history of how I came to these understandings and why it's really important to me. Later on, we will actually look at some dances. And we'll end with, as I promised 2 weeks ago, we'll end with a warning from Mickey Mantle. And if you're wondering how I got Mickey Mantle into a discussion, about ECD, you'll just have to wait till the end. Okay, but first, I'm going to ask everyone to very quickly, I would like everyone to unmute themselves and turn on their video if they so choose, because it's Dorothy's birthday. And so I would like you all to join me in a Zoom sing-along. Our voices will be off by internet latency, which will be a riot. But let's all sing happy birthday to Dorothy. And I have here a brownie I made for
Happy
her.
birthday.
You won't be happy.
Happy birthday
Birthday
to
to
you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dorothy. Happy to you.
That was awesome.
Probably awful too.
No, it's perfect.
What a
I love it.
cacophony. That was awesome. Okay, so everyone can mute themselves. And Paul Spout. So, why this talk? It began with planning last year on January 28th, one of the last times I called before the pandemic hit. I did a dance that was a survey of time signatures. And a dancer, when the LORE program was announced, a dancer requested if we could explore this in more detail, thus this talk. During that dance, I projected the sheet music before each dance and spoke a little bit about how the time signature and how the music influences our dancing. So the real question is, why did I do that program? Why did I want to do a dance that was a survey of time signatures? And to answer that question, I would like to give a brief history of me. That is, how did I come to appreciate English country dancing above all other social dancing? And also I noted, while this LORE program was initially conceived with the idea of here's something for CDNY members, we have people from all over the country, people from Australia. So I thought I would give a little introduction to myself. So my first English country dance was in 1982. My then girlfriend got a bunch of friends together in the second floor acting studio at SUNY Potsdam to do a 3-couple dance. I think it was Black Nag or Scotch Cap. I can't remember which one. She was an avid dancer and did things like drive 500 miles round trip to go to something called NEFA. I thought she was totally crazy. Why would you drive 500 miles round trip to what? To dance for a weekend? Little did I know that I'd marry her. Be told there will be dancing. And by the end of the decade, I'd be totally hooked myself and I'd be traveling 2,000 miles round trip to go to a place called Pinewoods. But it was in 1986, moved to Madison, Wisconsin to go to UW for graduate school. And that's the year I consider myself where I really started English country dancing. I'd maybe only done like 5 dances between 82 and 86. So in 1986, I started dancing, 34 years and counting. It was a really small, tight-knit group, experienced dancers. Because it was a small group, we did a lot of set dances. Dances like Whirligig were in our regular rep. And then soon I was contra dancing and Morris dancing and sword dancing and Scottish dancing. I was totally hooked on all kinds of forms of dancing. And then babies happened. And so bye-bye Scottish, bye-bye contra dancing. But of note, it was English I chose. I never stopped English dancing. Whenever I had to make a choice, English stayed. In 1993, we moved to Western Mass, to New England, and that's when I started dancing in Amherst and Brattleboro. And after some years there, near my end time there, I began calling in Amherst, and I ran a dance in Brattleboro. I started a dance in Brattleboro. And I was on the committee of the Brattleboro Ball the last 10 years of its existence. And then in 2016, I moved to New York City. I started dancing at CDNY immediately. And after a year or so, I started calling on the staff here. So why do I English country dance? At that time when I needed to make choices, I wasn't aware of it then, but when I look back, I realized it was all about the music. I just love the music to English country dancing. Now, I don't mean to offend anyone's first love if it's not English. And what I'm about to say is very subjective. Do you hear me? It is subjective. These are not statements of fact. This is what I believe. I just find other forms of social dancing too samey. Contras are all jigs and reels. Few dances are tied to a tune. Bands generally decide the tune. You know, the caller will say, give me a 32-bar medley. So there's not a lot of connection between the music and the dancing, not formally. I sometimes cheekily refer to it as the people's dance. Scottish, while the patterns are extraordinary, I just don't, the music doesn't plumb the depths like English. ECD alone, in my opinion, runs the gamut of the human expression in its music. And if you include the traditional dances, and as anyone familiar with my programming knows, I do, there's always a traditional dance on my program, you'll get all that contra or Scottish-like energy in an evening of English. So now I'm gonna dive into the heart of what I want to talk about. And I just want to say, what I'm about to discuss is true for the vast majority of the dances we do. There are always outlier dances, but probably for 98% of what we do, this holds. Okay, so what does a caller think about when programming? So on this is the program from January. And you'll notice in the time signature column, it is quite the survey of time signatures. But generally what a caller is doing is they're trying to give a lot of variety. You don't want all major keys. You don't want all minor keys. You don't want to do all squares all night. So you have a mixture of keys, not too many major keys in a row or minor keys. This is an extreme and giving a variety of time signatures, but there too, you don't want to do, 4 waltzes in a row and then 4 jigs in a row. So you mix it up, same thing with formation. And that category column, H for historical, M for modern, you'll note I'm quite heavy on the historical, that's typical for me. And there's this one T because I do have a traditional dance in every program. Difficulty and energy, that is, again, just to give a mix. That's my own personal scale on a 1 to 5, how difficult the dance is, how much energy, which kind of mostly equates to tempo. So nothing, I don't want dances that are all too difficult or all too, all up tempo. No one wants to do an evening of rants as much as it saddens me. Okay, so of these, which of these affect how we dance? Actually, how we move that is our body mechanics. And really, it's just 2 things: the time signature, the rhythm of the music, the beats in the music, and the energy or the tempo. And in this talk, I'm really going to be focusing on the time signatures. And before we get to that, just a quick refresher of rhythm notation. At the top of this pyramid is a whole note. And a whole note is made up of 2 half notes, and a half note is made up of 2 quarter notes, and a quarter note is made up of 2 eighth notes. And you hear people talk all the time about how music is mathematical, and well, here it is. 4 eighth notes equals 2 quarter notes equals a half note equals a whole note. It's very mathematical. How long is a whole note? Well, that is determined by the tempo of the overall piece. And what's important here is each is relative to the other. So whatever the beat is to the music, the others are in relation to it. 2 weeks ago, Cynthia talked about the importance of silence. There's also, these are rests, moments of silence, and they too have their notation, a whole rest, a half rest, quarter rest, and eighth rest. Okay, to the time signatures. These time signatures here are pretty much everything we dance to. There are a few outliers, but the vast majority of the dances, this is what we dance. And I've divided them up into duple meter, triple meter, and quadruple meter, which means there are 2 beats per bar for duple meter, 3 beats per bar for triple meter, and 4 beats per bar for quadruple meter. And the number of beats equals the number of steps. So when we're doing a duple meter dance, we take 2 steps. In English country dancing, by and large, except for in a few odd dances, there might be some special footing, but by and large, in English country, we take 1 step per beat. So in duple meter, we take 2 steps. In triple meter, 3 steps per beat, and 4 steps per, or 2 steps per measure, 3 steps per measure, 4 steps per measure. And part of how this talk came about, it's somewhere, I'm not sure when, I realized I'm always counting. When I'm dancing, I am always counting in my head. And if you've partnered with me, hopefully you don't see my lips moving, but I'm always counting. And I think it's incredibly valuable. And when I teach, I'm always telling people what the meter is. I'm telling people how many steps certain things take, at least I try. Not all callers do. Some callers they may play a few rounds. Let's hear a little of the music. And then they teach without a musician diddling underneath. And for me, that's just teaching the pattern. But I think what makes English so wonderful is we have an opportunity to truly dance and express the music. So I like teaching with a musician diddling underneath. So the dancers have a sense of, these 4 steps correlate to this cast. In fact, when if I'm on the dance floor and a caller isn't giving the meter and I'm confused, I'm not sure how many steps something takes, I'll raise my hand and say, can you, what's the meter of this? Just to help me as a dancer. Okay, so let's take a look at some dances. Prince William, one of my all-time favorite dances. You'll notice this is in 2/2. This here is a symbol for cut time, which equals 2, which is the same as 2/2. It's another symbol for it. Another way of noting it. So it's 2/2. There are 2 steps per bar. Here is the A music. Here's the A music, and the bottom staff is the B music. And if you count them, you'll see that there are 8 bars. And if you do the math, you realize there are 16 steps for the A, and likewise for the B. And in this music, in this dance, the first A is a cross over mere hay. So in 16 steps, you go all the way down, and I'll pretend we're all ones here. So that would mean in 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, we're halfway through. That makes sense. If you're going to do a whole hay for all the music, you're going to do half the hay for half the music. And then in the B music, ones cross and go below, and then do a 2-hand churn. 2-hand churns are typically 8 steps. So here in the music, you would, is where you have the 2-hand churn, which means the cross and go below. Here's the cross, and here's the go below, and here's the 2-hand churn. So you can look at the music and you can figure out how it's phrased. And a lot of this music, you can listen to it for the A music. Those first four bars of the A are a phrase. And then the second four bars are another phrase, likewise in the B. And these phrases of music help inform us as dancers. So my next slide is going to be an animation. And I just want to give, I don't know if it's an apology or what. In doing the preparation for this, and we did some tech rehearsals with Zoom, we discovered that sometimes things are a little off, and I realized, wow, here I am, I'm doing a talk about precise timing over a medium that has latency. So my apologies if things don't seem crisp, but they are on my screen. So in the next slide, you're going to see an animation. You're going to see a box over every step. And if you count the boxes, you will see there are 16 boxes for the A. The music is Bare Necessities on their CDS Boston CD, More Favorites. So here's the second hey, halfway through, and you're coming back. One's cross and go below, two's moving up, two-hand turn. Two's cross and go below, one's moving up, two's two-hand turn. So here I could almost end the talk because I think that's all you need to know. If you know the meter and you know how many bars there are in a phrase of music that corresponds to a piece of choreography, you can figure out a lot. And we're going to look at three dances that look at three different problems. One is how to break down a fussy dance. Some dances have lots of little phrases, and which often ends up in kind of mushy dancing. If you look down the line of a hall, you see people a little bit all over the place. But the music can help us break it down. It can also help reconstruct a dance from instructions. For example, a lot of ball booklets we get are just aid memoirs, and you don't get a lot of information. But if you know the meter and the phrasing, you can reconstruct all the niggly little details. And also there are dances where it's actually challenging to move your body. Seemingly there's not enough music to execute a move, but the music often will just, if you pay attention to the music, it'll tell you how to move, actually how to move your body. So the first dance we're going to look at is Knives and Forks, one of my all-time favorite dances. It's a long ways duple minor. It is in 3/2. So this is a triple meter. There are, if it's 3/2, 3 steps per measure. And if you look at the A music, you'll see there are 4 bars, and same for the B. So if you do the math, 4 bars times 3 steps, 12 steps to execute the A music, which is one's cast and do a back-to-back, one's cast back, do a back-to-back. That's on the second A. So if one's cast, that would be 6 steps, and they do a back-to-back in 6 steps, which means the forward for the back-to-back is only 3 steps, and the backing up from the back-to-back is only 3 steps. And the B is also only 4 bars, and that gets really fussy. And we'll talk about that in a minute. First, let's listen to the music to remind ourselves what it sounds like. This is from the CDNY Ball Prep CD from 2017, Cynthia Shaw, Naomi Morris, Gene Murrow. So it's cast and back to back. Here's the B, which has lots of little bits. So this is a beautiful flowing dance. It's one of my all-time favorite dances because you never stop moving. You just flow through the phrases of music. But often when danced, it looks like mush. If you're at the front of the room looking down, if you're calling, you look down, everyone's just like all over the place. It looks like a bunch of snakes. And that particularly is in the B part, because the B part, it is simply neighbors who are then facing out, lead away, churn, come back, crossover, diagonals cross, two-hand turn. But often people are just all over the place with their timing. So instead of nice little straight lines, you get snakes slinking back and forth across the hall. The way, when you break it down, you see, here's lead away with neighbor. It's just 3 steps. You churn in place. It's a beautiful little dancing move. This is often where people rush back and then they're way ahead of the music. But you actually have 3 steps to exchange weight in a beautiful dancing moment with your neighbor to face back in. You lead back in with neighbor. At this point, you are just home. A lot of times people are already they've already crossed. And then you cross with your partner. The second diagonals cross in 3 steps, while the first diagonals are doing a little loop on the end. First diagonals cross, and then a 2-partner turn. So now I'm going to show you a video, 2 very beautiful people dancing in a park across the street.
Do I know them?
You may know them, you may recognize them. In particular, you're going to see an A and a B. So you're going to see the cast and back to back and back again. And then notice in the B section, in our rehearsals, I tried talking over it and timing it, but apparently my audio is way ahead of the video. So me talking over it doesn't work so well. But pay attention when we get to the B part, how we take all those little 3-step moments. Here's the A, cast, in 6, and back to back in 6, and cast. Now here's the B, watch the groups of 3s, 3, diagonals in 3, and 2-hand turn. And then you don't let Dorothy fall down and she laughs.
Wise.
A wise maneuver on his part. You'll notice our assistants behind us kind of spotting our lines. So we need to give thanks to these 2 dancers named Con and Ed. New Yorkers may get that. All right, so let's look at another dance. Here we'll look at Take a Dance, and we'll do this, we'll look at reconstructing a dance from an aid memoir. So this is 6/8, this is a jig. There are, actually one thing I realized I didn't talk about, I am going to go back very briefly to this slide. So notice a jig, this is what we actually step on, the dotted quarter notes. So there's only 2 beats. When it's 9/8, a slip jig, there are 3. But it's often notated in 6/8. So it's dot, 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 dot. But here the beat I'm giving. Those are our steps. Dot, 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 dot. Okay?
So we don't take 6 small steps?
So you don't take 6 mincing steps in a jig. You only take 2 steps. So back to Take a Dance. So this is 6/8. There are 2 steps per bar. Again, 8 bars each, so they are 16 steps per. Let's listen to this music to familiarize ourselves. This is from the audio I ripped from YouTube, the Germantown Country Dancers Ball Prep from 2016 for this dance. Peggy Levy, Adam Alexa, Tonya Rottenberg, and Wes Steenson. Hope I got all those names pronounced correctly. And here's the music. And if you count the little boxes, you'll see there's 16. So take a dance. This is the actual ball instructions published for the Brattleboro Ball some years ago. And this is all dancers received, and this is typical of what you might receive for a ball. So if you're trying to prep for the ball, how do you reconstruct it? So if you're familiar with the music, it's 6/8 and there's 8 bars. You can start to reconstruct it. A 2-hand churn is in duple meter is typically 8 steps. And if there's 16 steps in total, there's only 8 steps left. And you have a lead down and a cast back. So you might decide that's 4, 4, and 8. And then that's repeated for the 2s. You're going to need 8 steps for a half figure 8. So again, one's cross and go below. That's probably two measures each. And then the second B is 4 changes of rights and lefts. Well, if you have 4 changes in 8 bars, that's going to be 2 bars each. Again, it's just a matter of doing the math. And then you realize, oh, I have 4 steps for each change. So, and after doing that, you realize you may have this kind of a notation. So I'm going to play music with this up, and you can see how it works. Lead down, cast back, 2-hand churn. 2s lead up, cast back, 2-hand churn. 1's cross and go below, 2's moving up. 1's half figure 8 up. And rights, lefts, rights, lefts. How many times have you done it? Oops, got ahead of myself here. Yes, that is the next dance. How many times have you done take a dance and you have someone who's just yanking your arm off in those rights and lefts and they're way ahead? I mean, clearly the music tells you 4 steps per change. So that's how the music can help you reconstruct a dance. Okay, red and all red. This will be an example of, there's an Amherst and Brattleboro, and there were some dances, in each location, each region is its own little village. But I noticed I started to miss some dances. And I'd been here for like 2 years, and I think I was going to call, and I was looking for dances that I had missed, that I hadn't experienced. And one of them was Up with Eiley. Whoops. Up with Eiley. And it's, that keeps happening. I'm trying to underline it here, the third dance. One of the absolute great tunes and dances. I just love this dance. And I had looked, when was the last time CDNY had done it? And it had been something like 6 or 7 years. And, and so I just really love the historical dances. I want to keep them alive. And so I maybe in some way I'm thinking I need to balance all the modern dances that are being called to some degree.
I'm gonna route you a related question that came up in the chat before I pass over the questions to Paul, which is from Diane in Los Angeles. What differentiates historical from traditional? And you can probably stop sharing.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. A traditional dance, where's the stop share? There we go. The historical dances actually stopped, right? At some point they died out and no one was doing them. And Cecil Sharp discovered the publications and started republishing and teaching them. The traditional dances didn't die out. These were the barn dances that people were just doing. So Speed the Plow, etc., rants, and the like, at Kaylee's. These were dances that people were doing at the time, and who knows when they started or where they ended, or they didn't end, but no one knows where they started or how. I don't know if anyone's done historical research in the traditional dances, but essentially those are dances that people were just doing, the people's dance.
Cool. Thank you. Paul, do you want to start with the chat questions, please?
Yes, I can do that. There are just a handful, but they're interesting. James Langdell. James, would you like to ask your question, or shall I ask it for you?
I can ask that.
Okay.
Well, I just really like the tune of Reginald Red, and had prepared that for practice recordings for.
I can't hear.
I can't hear either.
Unfortunately, James, your sound is not working for us. Paul, would you mind reading James's question? Sorry
Yeah,
about that, James.
here's the question that James posted in the chat. The tune of Red and All Red has a very song-like feel. Has anyone found historical lyrics to this melody?
Oh, I have no idea. But someone should write lyrics to it if they haven't. It's a gorgeous tune.
Yeah.
Does anyone out there know?
We'll have to leave that for another CD lore series or a follow-up to yours. Here's a question that was not posted in the chat, but which I have. Do you have an opinion? I shouldn't even ask that. I'm sure you do.
Me, an opinion, Paul?
About any difference imparted to the dance when the signature is 2-2, 2-4, or 4-4, which the footfalls are basically the same, but the way the meter has been indicated is different.
Yeah, so I don't know if there is a big difference. I think there's a difference in the quality of the music. So 2-4s tend to be, have more of a lilt or a hop to them. 2-2s tend to be often more stately, march-like, but that's not always true. 4-4s are often, I just hear people talk duple meter, triple meter, and lump 4-4 in with duple meters. Again, I think for the same reason you're saying, the footfalls pretty much are all the same. So, and you could, to some degree, you could throw in the 6-8 because again, it's just 2 steps, but obviously there's a definite lilt to the 6-8 with the triplets. In terms of the kinds of math I'm suggesting and the ways of thinking about dances and breaking them down, I don't think it makes, there isn't really much of a difference, but there's a difference in the quality of the music. It may give you some inner feeling that makes you hold your body a little differently, but not necessarily in the footfalls.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Sarah Muntz to ask her question. Sarah, would you like to, or would you rather I read it for you?
Well, give it a try.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess I don't remember off the top of my head if these dances where the phrase of the dance crosses the phrase of the music are modern dances or historical dances. Maybe they're both. But other than the callers reminding people when they're teaching about it, Any suggestions?
We're moved, so for example, let's say a half figure eight crosses a phrase of music or crosses bars in the music. Yeah, I think in the moment, if you're at an evening dance, I think, it certainly is helpful if the caller points that out. And I'm happiest as a dancer if the caller aids me with how many steps does it take. So if it's a triple meter, so the whole move is in 12 steps, and it's odd because it's really kind of a 3-step, 6-step, 3-step maneuver piece of choreography. It is helpful for me, I know as a dancer, if I know, it's that cast for 3, I do this for 6, and then I finish off with this last 3. And I did tell you earlier, I'm always counting in my head. So by the 3rd or 4th time through the dance, I have figured that out because I am aware, okay, this is 3-2, it's triple meter, things are in 3s and 6s. I should have mentioned that before. If it's in triple meter, moves are going to be in 3 and 6 phrases, or 12 by and large. If they're duple meter, things are going to happen in 4s and 8s by and large. So with that knowledge, you can start to piece together the moves. And as I said, by the 3rd, 4th time through the music, I have it figured out, and my lips have stopped moving by then.
Daniel, I'm going to jump in at this point for 2 things. First of all, we have some excellent examples in the chat of what you're talking about. One is rights and lefts in Jack's Health, which go across the musical phrase.
Sure.
And Martha Kent mentioned Trip to Kilburn, where the moves fall on a funny place in the musical phrase.
Now there is a dance. I count. Oh man, do I count. I was in preparing this talk, I chose dances, you can see why I chose them. Maybe I should have done, I really wish I had done Trip to Kilburn now that you mention it, because there is that moment you have to, you do that circle below and you do a 4-step lead through before you cast. And it's becoming aware of those moments where suddenly, when I became aware of them as a dancer, it's like, wow, light bulb went off.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So if I ever do this talk again, I'll have to remember I should have done Trip to Kilburn.
Steve Epstein would like to say something about, Steve, you had a comment that you'd like to add?
I have one way that I like to think of 2/4 versus 4/4, and I'm not sure that this is the way every 2/4 and every 4/4 is, but 2/4, I would count 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But 4/4, I would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Where you hear that 3 is stronger, but not as strong as 1. So 1 is the strongest, 2 is weak, 3 is strong, but not as strong as 1. And therefore, you have 4 beats in the phrase as opposed to 2 beats in the phrase. That's how I tend to think of it.
I totally agree with that. But in terms of dancing, what I do is I am counting choreographic units. So if I am doing a cross and cast, I would say cross in my head, I'm going cross 2, 3, 4, down 2, 3, 4. And it doesn't matter if that's in 2/4, 2/2, or 4/4. And it's so I agree with you, but in terms I'm always counting the number of, like what would be a good Mr. Beveridge's Maggot, if you do the Playford Ball version with that full figure eight, and you have to do it, what is it, in 12 step figure eight. It's hard to do. It's really hard to do. You really have to count it out, else you're just way ahead. Yeah, but yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying.
This is wonderful. I'm thinking we should take time for one more question. And then after that, why don't we break into some social time and do this a little more informally? Paul?
Well, Lynn Feynman brought up an interesting point. Lynn, would you like to ask that question, or shall I do that for you? You may have to unmute yourself.
I was trying to gesture that you could speak for me.
Too late, Lynn. You got to do it yourself.
So there have been a few sessions where people program at 5 things earlier this week, and nobody's brought up skip change, which I know is one of Paul's favorite things. It's one of mine as well, and a lot of us love to skip. But I do all this stuff by the seat of my pants. I feel like analyzing it doesn't help me that much. I just go by how it feels. But I'm now curious as to what it would be like to talk about how skip change steps fit in with what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to bring up footing, skip change or a simple skip. Gee, no one's brought up the rant step. How does that fit in?
Some of us don't want to think about the rent.
I think half the room just sat down, Daniel.
The last time I called Morpeth Rant at CDNY, there were 3 lines up. And I think there were 4 the last time I called Dargison. So there we go. Depending on, I don't really know if it makes any difference, because a skip, I may call in Paul here to help me pull me out of this mire. I don't know if it really changes anything I have been saying, because what I'm really talking about is how fundamentally is how many beats are there for a choreographic piece, and if a skip carries you more, or cross is worth 2 beats, then again you're just doing the math. So if a skip change is more than just a beat, and you're wondering how many skip changes is it to do such and such, then again, you're just doing the math.
The way I think about it is that the skip change is step, 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 hop. And so the hop takes up, that amount of the measure that might be a footfall.
Mm-hmm.
So it's step, 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 but it's actually a hop.
So I'm actually gonna, I see Cynthia here. Remember 2 weeks ago, Cynthia, I asked you, is it a misprint in Barnes? Why is Autumn and Amherst 2-2? And the reason and you gave your answer 2 weeks ago, but from a dancer's, from everything I've been talking about, from this perspective, from the dancer, it's 4-4. From a dancer's point of view, that dance is 4-4. And so that's why I was asking that question.
Well, the thing is, what I think is it doesn't really matter. It really matters. No, I'm
nothing.
serious.
People, you heard it. Nothing I've said matters.
No. But what I think is that it really is about the pulses and how people feel the pulses. And so nobody really knows if it's 4-4, 2-2, 2-4, whatever. It's the pulses of the steps. And that's really the thing. So the misprint in Autumn and Amherst doesn't really matter, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, if it was in 4/4, you would play it. Da 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 2, 3, 4, 1. Right, but if
But,
it's in
but
2/2,
I'm actually taking, I'm not taking two, but if someone took this talk and said, okay, how does Autumn and Amherst work? Would they run out of music, or would they have too much music? They would run out of music. Right? Because they would be taking the 2 steps per measure, but that's not how it works.
well, sometimes callers get into trouble because if they don't know the pulse of the tune well enough, they either have too many steps per measure, or they don't have enough steps per measure. And then all of a sudden the tune is over and people still have more dance moves to go. Right.
We've all been there.
Right. So that's always a really funny thing when you're playing for
And then we're back to where we started before this talk happened. I want to take this moment to move us into a more informal space. But first, I would, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Daniel Popowich. What a terrific topic. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And I think from here, we'll go ahead and stop the live stream. We'll make this more of a social time. And I'm going to put it into gallery view. So you can feel free at this point to unmute yourselves when you have questions. And it's useful for everybody if you mute yourself when you're not actively talking. Thank you,
Also,
everybody.
if I'll take this time to say, Jeff, is the live stream off?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions for me, I didn't want to put it on a slide or say it so it's forever in a video. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me. My email is my name, Daniel Popowich, all mushed together at gmail.com. Daniel Popowich at gmail.com. That's it.
Are you writing?
I'm just saying. I just wrote, great job, Daniel.
Ah.
I'm still thinking about that skip change thing. That's going to keep me awake tonight. I think a skip change takes twice as much time as a regular step, twice as much musical time to do that. A 1, 2, 3, a 1, 2, 3.
I think Deborah Franz-Blau said it correctly, that 2 skip changes is usually 4 steps. 1 skip change is 4 steps or 4 beats, and 1 is 2 beats. So dot, dot, dee, dot, 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 dee, dot. I think so.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's essentially similar to a rant. A rant, 1 rant step takes 2 beats.
Plus 2 Tylenol.
No.
Tylenol optional.
Who said that?
You
It's
poor
too-
guess.
It's potato chip, Lynn. It's potato chip.
Oh, it's Lynn.
As long as you do an even number, you'll end up on the correct foot.
Is that an even number of Tylenols?
Good plan.
Keep the traditional dances alive. Ah.
All right. Well, this is not on that topic, but thank you very much, Daniel. This is sort of a related though. I see Paul here. Is Beverly still in the house? Maybe, maybe not. It's kind of a thank you though, from my time when I was there and I had a dance background, but not in this form of dance. And you know how you're trying to learn this long string of pieces that you're not that familiar with. But what I really found I appreciated then and once I moved to the Twin Cities is how they would help you with that. Okay, here's where that tricky piece comes so that you can connect to make that smooth transition where you always forget. They really made a point of like sewing it together. And that was not something that I found here. And so when I call, I try to bring attention to that, you know, because we are all going to forget, you know, when it's a newer dance, or even if you've been doing it a while, but you haven't done it for some time. And so a big thanks for, you know, that attention to, okay, here's the tricky part and connect it to the easier parts. Because you were saying when it's a fussy dance or a PC dance, and you're like, is it worth it? How do you sew it seamlessly? You know, so anyway, along those lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.
I wonder oftentimes if there are questions on the dance floor that dancers feel uncomfortable about, or they don't know, but they don't have enough vocabulary to be able to ask the question of the callers and the musicians. I just kind of throw this out there, but I oftentimes do wonder about that. And maybe, you know, Margaret, you talking about that is one of those things, you know, of having the callers sort of, in a sense, seeing into the inner soul of the inarticulate dancer who doesn't understand about music or doesn't understand about all these things, and be able to offer information that can help them in a way that they don't even know that they need help. I don't know. I just throw that out there because I do think that about the dancers sometimes.
As a newer dancer in this form of dancing, I usually don't have a problem asking questions about the steps, but it never in a million years occurred to me in the middle of I'm being taught by somebody that I'm going to break out and run over to the musicians and go, can you help me out? What is this?
Well, no, I guess I shouldn't have said the musicians. I just think of that because I think of, you know, because I am, so I don't call. So anyway, yeah, no, you're right. That would be kind of weird.
But I think, you know, as I said, if I'm on the dance floor and there's a caller who is, as I refer to it, teaching the pattern, they may or may not have had the musicians, you know. I think most callers will always have the band play, you know, an A to get a sense of it. But then that's it. And you're kind of left on your own. And then they just say one's cross, go below. And they don't have a musician diddle underneath them. I will, and if particularly, maybe if I wasn't paying attention or I grabbed a partner late, I may have not have heard that music. So I'm there trying to figure it out. And I don't know if it's in 3/2 or 2/2. I don't know if it's duple meter, triple meter. Just having a sense of it, that essentially everything we do is in 2s or 3s, groups of, or typically our choreographic movements are in 4s or 3s. I'll ask, you know, and I think any caller should, or dancer should feel free to raise their hand and say, what's the meter? And then you can just build your toolbox of, oh, this thing is 4 steps. In a triple meter, it's 6 steps. And you can just build your own personal toolbox to help you. And it helps you remember dances too, I think. And I think it helps your memory.
So Daniel, you had a point about a tune that is not an English country dance tune, but that is a really good example of meter and where you would step differently. And that's I Want to Be in America.
Oh, yeah. So when I was doing research for this was just a fun little thing. And I was looking up some information about different meters, duple meter, simple meter, compound meter. And I discovered that if you look at 3/4, here, why don't I just share my screen again? If you look at, if you look at 3/4, there are 3 quarter notes. And if you look at 6/8, you see there are 6/8.
Daniel, we're not seeing your screen yet. We're just seeing black.
I have said I am, that's because, are you seeing it now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. I'm sharing, I have a dual monitor and anyway, never mind. So if you look at 3/4, there are 3 quarter notes. If you look at 6/8, there are 6/8 notes. And from this slide, we know that there are 2 eighth notes per quarter note. So if you look at 3/4, you could write, and you see 3/4 tunes, and they would be 6 eighth notes. In other words, 3/4 and 6/8 per bar have the same number of eighth notes. And I came across this little thing where talk about Leonard Bernstein in writing West Side Story has "I Want to Be in America" notated as being in both 6/8 and 3/4. And when you think about it, it makes sense. I want to be in America. Da, 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 ya, da, 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 da.
So if that were an English country dance, right, it would be 2 slower steps and then 3 quicker steps. 1,
Yeah.
2, step, 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 step.
Right. Okay, who wants to write that dance? Yeah.
And everyone steps back in the volunteer.
It's funny because I was sort of expecting somebody to ask me about this.
Orly, that was very broken up. We did not catch what you said.
Where is Orly? I don't even.
She has her video off.
Oh, okay.
And she's now muted.
She's
Orly,
muted,
if
yeah.
you said something, it got totally broken up.
She may have been saying it to her neighbor.
I have my video off. Now I'm said I was singing a bit.
Type it in the chat.
Yeah.
Your audio is totally broken
Yeah,
up.
unfortunately. While Orly is typing, Rebecca, what is it you were saying?
Oh, well, a couple of things. I mean, I just wanted to say that it was actually at that dance where you talked about the meters and you said, oh, a dance in 6/8 only has 2 steps. I mean, I have to say, as a musician, that was always second nature to me. You know, I never really, and I was like, wow, people would think there were 6 steps in a 6/8 thing. But I have to say, it actually helped me recently. I've been learning this piece that is supposed to be a jig, or a jig, but it's in 3/8, which makes no sense at all. And I realized that like the problem is that a 3/8 dance is really 3 beats to a bar. It's like, it sounds much more like, well, in Baroque music, it's more like a passe-pied or a minuet than a jig. And yet it's marked, jig, it's the end of a suite, and and so I partly because of that remark about jigs, only being 2 beats to a measure, it sort of helped me articulate like the problem I've been having with this piece that I've been learning, and which I still have to do some research on because, it was written by Bach's student Krebs, and he knew the difference between a jig and a passe-pied or a minuet. So why on earth does he have this thing that's in 3/8 called a jig? Anyway, so I would have noticed a problem with this anyway, but I just wanted to thank you because the way you made that particular remark at that dance sort of helped me articulate like the problem I've been having with this piece and why I need to solve this mystery of like, in fact, I wanted to ask this, has anyone ever seen a jig or a jig like in 3/8 time? I mean, it's a little bizarre.
There is a dance, I may have to look it up. Is it the Cambridge Waltz? I got the dance from a visiting English caller, went back in my Amherst days, and we asked him for the dance, and he gave us the music, and it was in 3/8. Let me see if I have it here.
Yeah, I mean, a waltz normally is in 3/4, right? I mean, what
Right.
can be in 3/8, I guess, right? But
So my question about that is that if it's in 3/8, is it possible that two measures actually are supposed to go together?
yes, it is possible, but I realized that, I mean, and this goes back to Daniel's point, I realized that the way I have been tending to interpret this piece is really a fast 3 per measure, which would not be a jig, you know, I mean, but maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. It's puzzling. I have to find, I mean, I think there were some jigs in 3/8, but not in this period and not this kind of piece. I don't know. I got to do some more research, but it's curious. It's almost, you wonder if it wasn't sort of a joke on the composer's part, like, haha, you think this is a jig, but it's really a passapier, you know, or I don't know. Anyway, oh, here it is.
Yum bum ba yum bum bum ba bum yum bum yum bum ba yum bum 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 yum bum 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 ya da 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 da. Anyway, I think as musicians play it for it, it's just imagine it's 3/4 and those are quarter notes.
Yeah. Well, a 3/8, I mean, it would just be like a little bit faster 3/4. Anyway. Interesting. I just have to say, I always have, you know, I love Gary Rudman's dances, but I always have a little bit of a problem with Handle with Care.
Oh, why?
Because the original piece by Handel is a minuet, and he's kind of turned it into a waltz, and it's just like I don't know, it just like always throws me off kilter because
yeah, it's
it
not as
doesn't-
expected.
yeah, and it you know, you have to sort of take it a waltz has to be a little faster than a minuet, and then whenever I dance that, I always feel like I'm sort of neither here nor there, like I'm neither in Handel nor in the waltz world, and it's just
So that one doesn't take you out of yourself.
What was that?
So that one does not take you out of yourself.
Yeah, it kind of bugs me, you know. I mean, I love his dances, but that particular one, just because it seems like it's neither here nor there to me. But anyway, that's just my personal taste. But
So Daniel.
Yes, Paul.
Oh, I'd love to hear your reaction to some of the exchanges that occurred in the chat. So one remark was this class should be obligatory for all dancers. I know what you're going to say to that.
Yes.
And then someone else responded, some people cannot hear the music. They can't hear the beat at all. To which a third person said, yes, and some can hear it, but not make their body move to it. What is your sense of how to deal with those situations?
What do you do? You know, a lot of, you know, at CDNY, we have, you know, I showed our program before and there's 3 dances, and then I noted a little break. For those who aren't familiar with the CDNY evening that we structure it, there's 3 dances for experienced dancers, while a teacher takes any beginner to another room and teaches them the basics. And then after those 3 dances, around 40 minutes or so, they come in and we actually start our general session. And that's an opportunity to help. What we don't do is and I don't know of any community that does, it says, you know what, you should go over there. It's just something we don't do. It's socially awkward. In other words, is there a way to help them hear the music, feel the music, count it, And if they can't move their moves, if it's a physical ailment, obviously there's not much you can do other than one thing I wasn't able to really get into, but I know one thing. Before I was a caller, I would be a dancer on the floor helping anyone I was dancing with who might be a beginner. And I think a really valuable exercise for anyone, no matter how experienced you think you are, but even for beginners, is to try to prompt for yourself. Do what a caller's doing. Because often what makes people dance off the music is they're waiting for the prompt. They're waiting to be told what to do. And by then it's too late sometimes. Or the caller may just be weaning. You know, I know when I call, I try to wean my prompting. So by the end of the dance, I'm not prompting at all. And so for people who have actual physical difficulty moving, maybe moving fast enough or with enough stride, what they might be able to do is anticipate. And just anticipating, knowing what's going to come can help. Actually, the one exercise I wanted to do, I planned on doing, but the pandemic hit, so couldn't do it, was in the experience session. I wanted to have our experienced dancers prompt their partners. So I was going to say, okay, first diagonals, I don't care how experienced you are, the experienced dancer. Second diagonals, you are inexperienced. I want all first diagonals, you're the experienced dancer. I want you to help your partner through gestures. And my exercise were twofold. One was, we have a lot of people who aren't really good partners for beginners. And, you know, every community has them. They're maybe a little too bossy or a little too pushy. You know, just to help people, you know, it's kind of hard on this video. No, you know, do this for you're gonna cross down now. Or, you know, a move, I do this with beginners a lot as I'm about to cast, you know. And it does two things. One is it'll help, I think it'll give us a better community because experienced dancers will be better partners to beginners. But also my real motivation is to get everyone to be their own caller. And if everyone is anticipating what's happening, if everyone is their own caller, then that means they are starting to think ahead instead of waiting for the caller. And they're already thinking, oh, after I do this, and then I'm going to do a half figure eight. Oh, right. And then I'm going to cross, and et cetera, et cetera. So one is, I don't know what to do, necessarily what to do without regarding someone who hears it but can't do it. I think the only thing you can really do then is give personal attention, which is often something we can't do outside of that. As soon as someone graduates from that beginner session, we don't really have a social construct for pulling such a person aside, unless Dorothy, our new ECD program chair.
Food for thought. Thank you, Daniel.
Food for thought.